welcome to Bethel Today. I'm Janice Stevenson. This is the show of the Bethel Democratic Town Committee. Today I'm speaking with Raghib Allie-Brennan, the part I didn't think I would get tongue-tied on, and he is our candidate this year for the State Assembly in the 2nd District. Hello, Raghib.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Good, thank you for having me.
Go, it's great to have you here.
It's funny that you messed up the Brennan part, which isn't the usual hard part.
It is not at all, but you know, I thought I might do that after I sat and practiced.
It's all right. People will get it.
Yep, that's true. Well, so let's start with how you got here. Let's start, you're from Bethel originally, is that true?
Yeah, I grew up in Bethel. I went to Bethel High School, graduated from there, and I've been a member of St. Mary's Church, was active in the youth group, and went on a couple of mission trips to Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Maryland. So I've kind of always been involved in Bethel, and after college I came back to the town from Marymount Manhattan College, and I got involved in the Bethel Democratic Town Committee, and I helped re-elect Matt Knickerbocker on his campaign. And since I was the young kid with the older generations that's running the town committee, they were kind of like, we need to have you around more. So
sure.
You know, I got elected to the committee, and they asked me to run for the Inland Wetlands Commission seat in 2013, which I won, and I was a member for a few months. So I've been around here.
So no, because this political thing though, it's not just like, oh, you slipped into it. What was your degree actually in?
So I majored in international relations, so it was more security policy and foreign relations, and I liked a lot of history, and so it did kind of find its way to be, I wanted to be more involved in public service as I came to a close in my senior year, which weirdly enough, I took a course on natural disasters, and I did my paper on Hurricane Katrina, and you know, was it a human, caused, or was it actually a natural disaster? And just studying that and writing about that, I was so furious, and I still am to this day to think what happened and how we let down a whole city, and how the government just failed. And my kind of mission from then on was always to make sure that we never let that happen again.
Right.
And that kind of drove me It was in my spring semester of my senior year, so that kind of just projected me into getting involved in public service.
But it does seem to me that international policy is in fact a broader interpretation, but it's still very much civic-minded. It's just looking at the global civic situation, I would say.
Yeah, because a lot of what we focus on too was, like refugees, and all that is still, all
huge.
Politics is local.
That's
and
right.
We have refugees that were in Bethel and from the Syrian crisis, so it all comes full circle.
Absolutely. So you were elected to Inland Wetlands, and then what happened? You had some kind of an opportunity, yeah?
So I left Connecticut. I made the decision because I had an incredible opportunity to work in our nation's capital in the United States House of Representatives as a legislative analyst. So I wanted to be a small fish in a big pond and learn more and develop, I was 22 at the time, and so I jumped at it, and I don't think anyone can argue the benefit that was to me.
Sure, absolutely.
And the plan was always to come back and use my knowledge.
And you did start out, part of what got you to that level was that you were involved with Elizabeth Estes' campaign, was that correct?
Correct, yeah. I was interning in her district office, so I was helping, at the time she was new, so I was helping with the constituent services, like building out the department and helping, and I kind of proved myself to her and her team, and they kind of took me on, and then I was working on her campaign, and so I just knew policy was always my thing. I studied it, I wanted to learn more about it, and that's kind of why I was like, I need to go to the center stage
to Congress
and learn. Yeah.
Exactly. And then now you made the decision to come back to Bethel. And when you came back, did you come back immediately thinking, well, what public office can I run for?
No. So I'd always been thinking about the idea of coming back. I was in Congress for 2 years, and I did a lot, but I always wanted to come back, and the initial plan was to come and challenge Dan Carter, who was actually vacating the seat to run against Richard Blumenthal, the United States Senator.
Right, exactly.
So that was always the plan, but everyone knows Dan is a good guy, he's a great guy to get a drink with, but when I'm knocking on doors, what is clear is that a lot of people feel that they have been unheard, and they're upset, and they're sick and tired of sending people to Hartford that are not listening to them, and they're more concerned about the me and the I rather than the we. And my campaign has always been about the we. And so, this has all just been me kind of trying to be that voice that I know has been missing from communities, whether they be New Orleans or here in Bethel, and that's what I've just always wanted to be.
So what are you hearing? What would you say is sort of the top thing that comes up when you're knocking on the doors?
Sure, I mean, I guess a lot of people talk about economic development. I mean, we know things in the state haven't been heading in a positive direction, which is why we need fresh faces and new voices. You know, my father is a Connecticut small business owner in the IT sector, and I hear, you know, personally, firsthand, how hard it is to grow a business here. And, you know, I really just want to be an advocate and a, you know, champion for economic development to make sure that, you know, even people my age who want to stay here and they want to stay home, you know, can, and that they can still thrive.
So a couple of things that we talked about. One of them, or that you mentioned, was the border toll was one of the things. Was that right? First, could you explain what that is?
So the border toll, I mean, a lot of people have been, you know, some legislation has come back up about whether we should have tolls on the borders. And
for the state.
For the state. And I am like staunchly opposed to that. I don't think, you know, while I think it's important that we find, you know, adequate ways to fund our, you know, infrastructure to fix that. I don't think that should be done on the back of commuters, whether they're in-state Connecticut commuters going to New York or Massachusetts, or if they're, you know, out-of-state commuters coming in for work.
That makes sense. And then the other thing you were talking about
is the mileage tax.
The mileage tax, exactly.
Yeah, the mileage tax has come up. It's like been a big thing that Republicans have been pushing, and no, I do not support a mileage tax.
Explain again, what is, when you say mileage tax, what exactly?
So it's basically the idea that the state can tax you for every mile you drive, which, you know, it sounds pretty out there. But
how would you do that?
Well, the thing is that Congress and the federal government have funded a study about this, but I think it's more just for us to learn more about, you know, adequate ways of, you know, bringing a more modern transportation, you know, scheme for funding. So I think when we're trying to study something to learn more, of course I support that. I don't support the actual mileage tax. And, you know, working in Congress as an analyst, I know that information is the key to good legislation. So, and this, you know, study will help us learn more about how our highways and roads are used, and more about, you know, interstate fueling.
Kind of what are your thoughts? And I realize this isn't something that we talked about, but several years ago when Daniel Malloy was running for governor, he talked about some ideas that he had about ways that we could maybe do more around our infrastructure and stuff. What kind of ideas? And blue sky thinking, what would you like to see kind of happening?
Well, I don't support those. I do think it's important that we kind of invest more in like walkable communities and commuter rail. We have Danbury line. You know, there's something to be talked about double tracking the line, and you know, more about transit.
Double tracking, you mean, because right now we just have places where trains can pass one another, but that would mean truly 2 tracks all the way out and back, which would make it much easier to go back and forth. About electrifying that, is that something, I mean, again, we didn't talk about this previously, but I know that that's something that, you know, with lovely trains out on the main line, but on the branch it's a little
I mean,
off.
I think Metro North is like the second most used rail in, you know, the states, and I think we need to really kind of invest in our commuters and making sure, you know, the younger generation can get around. You know, maybe they don't have cars, and it's easier to hop on the train and, you know, get to work quicker. So we need to really look at that.
Yep, absolutely. How about here in Bethel, anything in particular that, so you said that people are talking about the economic stuff, or where do you stand on, you know, what are your thoughts about things that maybe could be done for, say, education? Any ideas there?
Sure, and I mean, education, I think investing in early childhood education is important to me. The congresswoman I worked for in DC, she was on the education committee, so I learned a lot about STEM education, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and, you know, not all kids go to college. Not all of them want to. So, you know, making sure that kids who go to trade schools can get connected to jobs that, you know, are in that field. That's important to make sure that we're building our workforce here in the state instead of pushing them elsewhere. And then I think focusing on special education. I know Bethel is a great town for special education, and, you know, sometimes I think, you know, funding-wise, we can get punished for that because we could become a magnet, and a lot of people want to move here, and so the resources become a little more spread thin. So kind of seeing kind of an overhaul about funding special education in the state, because I know, you know, Hartford does pay a lot as well, upwards I think around $45 million in special education. So making sure that, you know, every town and city has what they need to, you know, adequately help these parents and these kids, and, you know, a parent shouldn't have to worry about shopping for a school, you know, for their child with needs.
Yep, makes sense. Now I noticed too in the card, I have the card for you, that you talk about a little bit safe gun laws.
Yes. Well, this is something that Dan Carter was never good on, and he, the district is, we have a slither of Newtown, and
yes, exactly.
To kind of ignore, or even, I think, not even offer a solution or some kind of compromise, it's crazy that he got reelected.
So you support common sense gun laws?
Yes, of course. And I would, if I become state representative, I would defend what we have on the books, the 2013 legislation, and there's more we can do while still respecting the Second Amendment. So I support gun safety and gun violence prevention. Okay,
good, cool. So you've kind of indicated that sometimes people, a reaction they're having is, well, gee, he's awfully young. You're not that young, because you've done a fair amount of work over a number of years. It sounds like you actually did a fair amount of working even like when you were in high school and stuff. But you're 25?
25.
Okay.
Yes.
And so what do you say when people say, gosh, you're kind of young?
Well, I think those people who have an issue or think my age is a liability are the same people who pushed for Steve Harding in the 107th district to run, and he still is a young 20-something, and he went up against a businessman with 30 years experience. So, I am young, but I care, and my intentions are to help the community and be a voice that hasn't been there, and I really want to roll up my sleeves and do some good, and not sit on the sidelines and just complain. Complaining is easy, but where are the solutions? Where are the alternatives? Even if it's just something to talk about, at least we're going somewhere. We're not just sitting there and complaining, which is easy to do.
Yes, that's true. So you said that you were involved and you did some of the different projects and stuff, mission projects with St. Mary's. What kinds of stuff did you go and do? Because you mentioned a couple different places.
Yeah, so we went to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which was interesting. We went to Baltimore, and then our nation's capital, actually.
Right.
And yeah, we built houses. Was
it the same work basically in every location, or did you see that there were sort of?
No, it was different. There was like some things were going to homeless shelters and just feeding them and giving them a smile, and letting them talk to young kids. And some of it, I worked at a daycare with kids who didn't have fathers or mothers, so it was kind of like being there and letting them know that they can go on and do things like us and give back to the community, which my parents instilled in me, to make sure that my parents didn't have as great a life that they provided for me, and that it's important to give back. And then I think St. Mary's reinforced public service and making sure that we are out there whenever we have the chance to do what's right.
Right. So how were things like when you went into to DC? Because I'm sure that being involved with Congress was one environment, but going in and actually doing service for the community was actually, because Washington is a very diverse community. So what kinds of things, was that more the daycare thing that you were doing in DC, or what was that like?
Well, that was in high school. We went to DC for the mission trip. Yeah,
right, no, that's what I mean.
Yeah, so and DC is still changing, and where I lived, 10-minute walk from the Capitol, and there was still, gunshots going on, and it's a ever-changing city. But yeah, just the nature of being in Congress itself is just as crazy.
But it's very, very different though than being, in like the needier sections, if you will, of Washington.
Yeah.
I would think that, having done one and then going back in the other thing, you had to have been kind of aware of, wow,
and I think that's what kind of drives you when you're at work and you're behind the desk and you're thinking about who's this for. Not only was it for the constituents of North Carolina's 12th district, it was for people around the nation. And that's because
you were working with a congresswoman,
Congresswoman
correct?
Alma Adams. She was the 100th woman elected to Congress, and she was Greensboro to Charlotte. She had the most gerrymandered district in the whole United States.
Oh, the whole United States.
The whole United States.
Wow.
So you can imagine, the constituency, very underserved, and low income, hardworking people who, it was public service within itself. Even though I wasn't, on the constituent side of helping, it was still policy, and a lot of stuff we worked on was clean water before Flint was a thing. We were helping with coal ash, and then we worked a lot on education.
Right.
So there was a lot of
different stuff.
Yeah, and it was very passionate.
So at this stage, so you were doing, and you're still very interested in policy, obviously, which is why you would want to go and be a member of the legislature here in Connecticut. But you mentioned that you weren't really on the constituent side, so now is your opportunity. That's part of what you're doing now.
Yeah, because I was in Estee's office, though, so I got a taste of all of it. So, when I was in Estee's office, we worked, firsthand with constituents who needed help, whether that was, you know, veterans who wanted to find medals that were never given to them. So I kind of like did a lot of stuff on that local level. And then I went to DC and worked on the policy side. So I got a taste of it all, and then I did the local and the national level.
So now bringing it back to the local piece. So I understand when we met previously that you are well on your way to have actually door knocked pretty much the entire district. Is that?
We are. Yeah, we've pretty much gone through it. I think Reading's our last stop. But yeah, it's been interesting, and I mean, most people think I'm selling something, and mostly it's dogs barking. But whenever I do interact with someone, it is like something that I listen to and take in, and really see what we can do when we get to Hartford. And
tell me again, because you don't have all of Bethel, you have part of Bethel, and you have part of Reading. Is it West Reading is what you've got? Reading. And then you go into the district goes into Danbury. It goes down like towards the mall, towards the airport, but it kind of keeps below the highway. It's very... Right, below 84. And then it actually now goes over into Newtown. Newtown, yeah. It's like a couple of streets. There's like 600 voters, I think, in the district in Newtown. So it's small, but it's still, you know... Oh, yeah. But it's interesting, and it's sort of the bottom half, of it, as it were, of Bethel, isn't it? Yes, it's like below. I want to say like the municipal center, down, all the way down to Reading, and right. So it's more downtown Bethel. It's 2. Is it right? Voting district number 2. Is that right? 3 and 5. Yes. Got it. Got it. So we don't have Stony Hill. Right. No Stony Hill. Yeah. Yeah. I have to think about which ones are which. How they cut it up. Yeah. Right. So what other kind of things, what would you like to mention since we've got you here? Anything in particular that I haven't covered? Yeah, well, I mean, I think another big thing I have been hearing knocking on doors and in Bethel was the opioid issue. And, you know, that's been something crazy in our state. And I'm actually wearing the Hero Project bracelet from Bethel. A man, Don Olson, started this after he lost someone in his family to opioid addiction. And so it stands for Heroin Education to Resist Opioids. And, you know, making sure that we're staying on top of the issue. I know we've kind of done a lot with making sure that people can't doctor shop. Right. But I think we need to start looking at earlier, like telling kids. I remember DARE when I was a kid was a big thing, and making sure that before it's too late, people know don't touch these things and be careful. Right, and making sure that the funding is maintained for that kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to look at the card for a moment here. Okay. Talk to me a little bit more about, because you talked about STEM education when you were working for the Congresswoman. What kind of things are you thinking about here in Connecticut? Any ideas or thoughts based on your experiences that things you'd like to maybe see happening more here? Or education-wise, or? With STEM education, yeah. With STEM. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, just investing more and making sure, I think that the most important thing is to be going to schools like Abitech and making sure that we can connect kids to, here's what you can do after school, and here's where you can continue learning this. And if you're learning this right now in school and someone needs that intern or that apprentice to gainfully get employment eventually down the road, it's making sure that we have those connections, and whether that's going to the chamber and having meetings with, you know, these businesses and the schools. I think that's definitely something I would love to do, like a roundtable, to make sure we're really hearing, you know, where's the gap and how can we make sure that we're keeping our students here, our you know, education and our bright students here, and we're still connecting them with jobs in this state. Something, and again, we didn't talk about this one, but it occurs to me that in terms of keeping young people in the community, we've talked about transportation, we've talked about the education. Any thoughts about housing or? Yes, and I think that's another thing when people say, oh, I'm so young, like, what do I know? But, you know, when either you're buying or you're renting, housing costs are through the roof. So, you know, we need to make sure that if I want to rent in Bethel and stay by myself or get a couple of friends, it's affordable. Why, you know, I think the question is why struggle here in town in a rural community when I can go to New York City and struggle with more opportunity and more jobs. So, you know, to make sure that we aren't pushing those people away when kids want to stay home, and there's nothing wrong with staying, you know, where home is. Staying local, right. Yeah. There's actually a fair amount of industry in this area, and high tech things. I noticed the other day that, you know, we've got a lot of aerospace stuff, actually, even in this community, that, you know, which the STEM aspects feed into that, and also trying to keep young people here so that you've got the talent in the area. And that's why I think also, you know, turning to green jobs and clean energy.
I think that's something that Connecticut hasn't really tapped into yet, and we need to start incentivizing more for solar and making sure that we can be a leader on that, and we should start doing it.
Yeah, that's true. Going back to the thing,
yeah.
It's amazing that we're going through lots and lots.
Well, I'm a fast talker, so.
You need to talk more. No, you don't need to talk more slowly. So you do talk about the clean energy future, and we talked a little bit about solar. Any other ideas? I mean, obviously there's residential things that can be done, but if can you dig a little deeper into that for me and tell me ideas and things?
Well, and then
you've
I think
seen?
a passion of mine was, like I said, it all kind of stemmed from Hurricane Katrina and natural disasters, and about that, what drew me to it was environmental policy and making sure that we had Sandy, which affected us.
Yes.
Completely different from Katrina, but still, we had our own hurricane that kind of damaged things, and it could have been worse if it turned to us. So making sure that we are, strengthening our coastal lines and still protecting our environment. I think energy and environment go hand in hand, and that's something I advised in Congress as well. So it's just kind of looking for those ways that we can kind of incentivize people to do more with it, and there is the opportunity to. So we need to start looking at better ways.
What kinds of things? What kind of better things?
Like solar, and I think like hydro energy, maybe introducing that more into our electric grid, and just more with solar. I think we haven't been incentivizing people to really use that, and giving the incentives. So.
Yeah. Have you had conversations with the people like Matt Knickerbocker and various groups here about some of the things that have been looked at with regards to doing solar in the towns?
We haven't talked about that. That's something that I will have to sit down with Matt on. We've talked about more about the economy-wise and what's working, and the property tax, and how that's just something that's going to take a good. We need to really look at the books and make sure that the people can no longer bear the burden of irresponsible spending and unnecessary spending. So tightening up. And so, yeah, me and Matt have been talking a lot. I think things have finally cooled down with the campaign, and we're kind of in a groove now. So, yeah, as I start speaking to more leaders like Julia Pemberton and Reading, we do discuss, what is really important to the people in the town. And, Reading is big on, the environment, open spaces, toxic waste, and making sure that there's not garbage everywhere. And so it's kind of interesting to see each different, because there's 4 towns, so you have a big kind of different diverse, one's
absolutely.
a city, one's a little town, and Reading, we have a lot of commuters from there, and so it's different, and it's kind of fun.
So what kinds of things are you hearing then, or so you're talking to officials as well within the communities, like in Danbury, how, what's kind of different in Danbury from what's in Bethel?
In Danbury, they focus more, I've heard more on the energy and the environment and education, which we spoke about.
Sure.
I think education is a big deal to them. And yeah, same with Reading, it's energy environment. I think that kind of seems to be the big theme. But yeah, to really focus on education and making sure that we're there for the children and making it more affordable for anyone who wants to go to college. So to look at, there's a lot of things to look at, and to, when we're on committees, to make sure that we're having conversations, and I want to bring that back to the towns.
Which particular committees, because I'm sure you're familiar with what committees are out there, which would be kind of your dream team of committees to be able to be involved with?
Well, I think
when you're elected?
Obviously education, I think it's so important to our district, and to make sure that we're on top of things there, especially with funding and special education and STEM. So those are a lot of issues I'd like to talk about. I think the energy is something that I've worked on in Congress and I know a lot about. I'm not sure that people find it as attractive as I do, but it would be interesting to kind of see more where there's room for us to progress the state with that in mind.
Good. All right. So we are coming down to the last couple of minutes, and again, you're running for the 2nd District in the State Assembly, and that represents, like we said, it's part of Bethel, and I'm going to do this again. So it's District 1, 3, and 5. Okay, so it's sort of the southern tier of the town, plus part of Reading, Newtown, and Danbury.
Yeah.
Wow, and you've actually, and how many doors has that actually been?
Too many now. No, but we're still going. And I plan to knock it again before Election Day.
Right.
To make sure the people we missed get a chance to talk to me and you know, a lot of them are angry. They really do feel like they haven't been heard, and you know, I plan to listen and to be a voice for their issues and for the district, and not just go on my own agenda and just it's about me. And it's never been about me. It's been about we and us as a district as a whole, and making sure every voice is heard, whether that's Democrat or Republican or Independent. You know, I really want to be that voice.
Yeah, good. Now you're also, this is one of the races statewide where the state Democratic Party is really helping you and working with this, so that we think there's a real good shot.
Yeah, they think we can win. I mean, our district voting-wise, it's almost split. But I mean, we've been out there knocking on doors. I think that's what wins elections here locally, and you know, we're doing it, and we're actually listening. I think people know we're listening. I haven't really heard anything from what my opponent's doing or if he's out there, but I know they know that I'm there, and with my unique name, I'm sure they won't forget it on election day.
Right, we did do the lesson, and like we were saying, that what I find tricky is because of the G in the middle of your first name, I think that it should be pronounced.
The funny part is my dad is from Guyana. He's an immigrant. That's the top of South America. And my mom, she's Irish Catholic from Queens. So, you know, that makes me just your average Guyanese, Irish Catholic American with a Middle Eastern first name, because my dad, he named me after a 90s American football player, Raghib the Rocket Ishmael. So when he was young, when he had me, he thought it was cool. So I'm the melting pot.
Absolutely, all in one person. That's pretty cool. That's amazing. All right, so we're coming to the end of the show. Again, this is Bethel Today. This is the show of the Bethel Democratic Town Committee. I'm Janice Stevenson, and we have been talking with Raghib Allie-Brennan, and I think I got it that time.
Perfect.
And again, he is running for the State Assembly, and it would be for the 2nd District. The election is, I believe, like 93 days away. And the fact that I know that is a little crazy, but there it is. So that's it.
We have the countdown clock.
Yes, and we actually have it now, too. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye.